My name is Nelson, and at 67 years old, I thought I had seen everything life could throw at me. For 25 years, I lived peacefully in the house I built with my own hands, every brick placed with care and love. But last Tuesday morning, my son Jake stood in my living room with his wife Sarah, demanding I hand over my keys and leave immediately. What I discovered at the bank the next day would change everything between us forever and expose a betrayal I never saw coming. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like button if you've ever dealt with family drama, and subscribe, because this story has a twist you won't see coming. Trust me, you'll want to stick around for what happened at the bank. I spent 42 years working construction, starting as a laborer at 18 and eventually building my own small contracting business. Every callus on these hands tells a story of hard work, of providing for my family when Jake was growing up. The house where this all unfolded sits on 3 acres of land that belonged to my grandfather, passed down through generations with a clear warranty deed that nobody ever questioned. When Jake was 12, he would spend summers helping me lay the foundation for what would become our family home. I remember his small hands trying to hold the level steady while I checked each course of concrete blocks. He was proud of that house, always bringing friends over to show them the workshop we built in the basement, the wraparound porch where we watched thunderstorms roll across the valley. After high school, Jake went to college for business administration, got himself a good job at an insurance company downtown. For years, our relationship stayed strong. He would visit every Sunday, bring his laundry sometimes, and we would work on small projects around the property. I was proud of the man he had become, responsible and hardworking, just like I had tried to teach him. Everything changed 3 years ago when Jake married Sarah. She seemed nice enough at first, a real estate agent with a sharp mind for business and an eye for property values. But gradually, I noticed Jake's visits becoming shorter, less frequent. When they did come by, Sarah would walk through my house with a calculating look, commenting on the size of the rooms, the age of the appliances, the maintenance requirements for such a large property. Last year, Jake started making subtle suggestions about my living situation. He would mention how the house was probably too big for one person, how the utilities must be expensive, how much work it took to maintain 3 acres. At first, I thought he was just being concerned about my well-being as I got older. I was collecting my pension from the union plus Social Security, and while I was not wealthy by any means, I was comfortable and could handle my expenses just fine. The suggestions became more frequent over the past few months. Jake would point out every little maintenance issue, every squeaky door or dripping faucet, as evidence that I was struggling to keep up with the property. Sarah would chime in with stories about other elderly people she knew who had sold their homes and moved to retirement communities, always emphasizing how much happier they seemed. But this was my home. Every room held memories of Jake growing up, of holidays with extended family, of quiet evenings, reading by the fireplace I built stone by stone. The thought of leaving felt like abandoning everything that mattered to me. I could not understand why Jake seemed so eager for me to give up the life I had worked so hard to build. Tuesday morning arrived gray and cold, with frost covering the grass and a feeling in the air that suggested winter was coming early. I was drinking my first cup of coffee when Jake's truck pulled into my driveway at exactly 8 o'clock. Sarah was with him, both of them dressed more formally than usual, carrying a leather briefcase and manila folders. The moment they walked through my front door, I could sense tension that had nothing to do with the weather. Jake's jaw was set in a way I remembered from when he was a teenager, determined to get his way about something. Sarah stayed close beside him, her hand resting protectively on the briefcase like it contained something precious. "Dad, we need to talk," Jake said, without his usual greeting, without asking about my health or commenting on the weather. "Sarah and I have been doing some research, and we're worried about you living here alone." Sarah opened the briefcase and pulled out glossy brochures for assisted living facilities, spreading them across my kitchen table like she was dealing cards. "These are some excellent communities in the area," she explained with practiced efficiency. 24-hour medical care, meal services, social activities with people your own age. You would be much safer and happier." I stared at the brochures, recognizing the manipulation immediately, but feeling confused about the sudden urgency. "I appreciate your concern," I said carefully, "but I am perfectly capable of taking care of myself. I'm not ready to leave my home." Jake's face darkened and he exchanged a meaningful look with Sarah. "Dad, you are not being realistic. What if you fall and nobody finds you for hours? What if there is a medical emergency? This house is too isolated, too big for someone your age. I have neighbors, I reminded him. The Hendersons check on me regularly, and Mrs. Patterson brings me soup when I'm feeling under the weather. I have a good support system here. Sarah leaned forward, her voice taking on a tone I recognized from her real estate career, smooth and persuasive, but with an underlying pressure. Mr. Nelson, we have already visited these facilities and put down a deposit at Sunset Manor. They have a beautiful apartment available, but we need to move quickly because the waiting list is very long. The presumption took my breath away. They had already made arrangements without consulting me, as if my opinion did not matter in decisions about my own life. You put down a deposit, I asked, my voice rising slightly, without asking me first. Jake stood up abruptly, his patience clearly wearing thin. Dad, we are trying to help you here. You are being stubborn about something that is obviously the right decision. We cannot keep worrying about you living out here alone. Nobody asked you to worry, I said, feeling my own temper starting to flare. I'm managing just fine on my own. Sarah pulled another set of papers from her briefcase, legal documents with official seals and multiple signature lines. We have prepared some paperwork to make the transition easier, she said. Power of attorney documents so Jake can help manage your finances and a property transfer to simplify things while you are settling into your new home. The word transfer hit me like a physical blow. These were not temporary arrangements or safety measures. They wanted legal control of my property and my finances. I think you both need to slow down here, I said, standing up from the table. This is moving too fast, and I have not agreed to any of this. Jake's mask finally slipped completely. Dad, you are not thinking clearly about this situation. We are doing what is best for everyone involved. Sometimes family has to make hard decisions. As I looked more carefully at the papers Sarah had spread across my table, the full scope of their plan became crystal clear. These were not assisted living applications or temporary care arrangements. The documents were property transfer forms designed to sign over ownership of my house and land to Jake immediately. Sarah's real estate expertise was evident in every carefully worded clause. She had prepared documents that would transfer the deed to Jake's name while I was supposedly temporarily residing at the assisted living facility. But I noticed that nowhere in the paperwork was there any provision for me to reclaim ownership if I decided to return home. You want me to sign over my house? I asked, directly holding up the transfer documents. This is not about my safety or well-being. This is about getting control of my property. Jake at least had the decency to look uncomfortable, but Sarah stepped in smoothly. Property management becomes much more complicated as people age, she explained. This way, Jake can handle maintenance issues, property taxes, insurance claims, all the details that might become overwhelming for you. And if I decide I want to come back home, I pressed. Sarah and Jake exchanged another look, and this time I caught the calculation behind it. Well, Sarah said slowly, that would depend on many factors. Your health, your ability to live independently, whether the property is still suitable for your needs. The truth hit me like a sledgehammer. They intended to sell my house. All this talk about my safety and well-being was a smokescreen for a plan to liquidate my property and pocket the proceeds. In today's market, my 3 acres with the house I built was worth at least $400,000 money that Jake and Sarah clearly saw as their inheritance rather than my security. You've already been talking to real estate agents, have not you? I accused. This whole assisted living story is just a way to get me out of the house so you can sell it. Jake's face flushed red, confirming my suspicions. Dad, you are being paranoid. We are thinking about your future, your security. My security. I laughed bitterly. My security is this house, the equity I built over 25 years, the land my grandfather left me. You want to take away the one thing that gives me financial independence. Sarah's professional composure was slipping. The housing market is very strong right now, she said. Prices might not stay this high forever. It would be smart to take advantage of current conditions. There it was, the real motivation: market timing, profit margins, investment opportunities, everything except genuine concern for my welfare. So this is about money, I said flatly. Everything is about money, Dad, Jake snapped. You cannot eat sentiment or pay medical bills with memories. We are trying to protect you from making poor financial decisions. Poor decisions like living in the house I own, free and clear. Poor decisions like maintaining my independence. Poor decisions like not handing over my life's work to my son, who clearly sees me as a burden to be managed rather than a father to be respected. The words hung in the air between us, and I saw Jake flinch as if I had struck him physically, but instead of backing down, he doubled down on his position. "You are not capable of managing this property anymore," he said coldly. "Look around, Dad. The gutters need cleaning. The driveway has potholes. The paint is peeling on the north side. You cannot keep up with maintenance, and it is only going to get worse as you get older." Sarah jumped back into the conversation, sensing that Jake was losing ground. "We have had preliminary conversations with a few potential buyers," she admitted. "Just to get a sense of market value, nothing formal, but there is significant interest in this property." "Preliminary conversations," I repeated, my voice dangerously quiet. "You have been showing my house to buyers without my knowledge or permission. Just informal inquiries." Sarah backtracked quickly. "Professional networking market research." But the damage was done. They had already begun the process of selling my home before even attempting to get my consent. This was not a family discussion about my welfare. It was a hostile takeover disguised as concern. Jake played his final card, the one I should have seen coming. "Dad, we are worried about your mental state. You have been forgetting things lately, getting confused about dates and appointments. We think you might be showing early signs of dementia, and that means you need professional supervision." The accusation stunned me into momentary silence. They were questioning my mental capacity as a way to justify taking control of my life. It was the ultimate insult, the final betrayal of everything I thought our relationship meant. What followed was the most intense psychological assault I have ever experienced from my own family. Jake and Sarah took turns undermining my confidence, my judgment, and my right to make decisions about my own life. Sarah pulled out her phone and showed me a list of contacts. "We have already spoken with your doctor, your neighbor Mrs. Patterson, and your cousin Robert," she claimed. "Everyone agrees that you need more supervision and support than you are currently getting." I knew this was likely a lie, but the doubt crept in anyway. Had I been showing signs of confusion that I was not aware of? Had my neighbors really expressed concerns about my well-being? The uncertainty was exactly what they were counting on. Jake pressed his advantage. "Remember last month when you forgot about your dentist appointment and the time you left the stove burner on after making lunch? These are warning signs, Dad. We cannot ignore them and hope they get better." Every minor mistake, every ordinary human forgetfulness was being weaponized against me. The dentist appointment had been rescheduled 3 times due to weather, and I had left a burner on low heat under a pot of soup, not exactly a major safety hazard. But presented as evidence of declining mental capacity, these incidents took on a sinister significance. Sarah brought out financial statements that she claimed showed my poor money management. She pointed to automatic payments for utilities, regular donations to charity, and occasional purchases of tools or materials for home maintenance as evidence of impulsive spending and lack of budgetary discipline. "Assisted living facilities provide financial management services," she explained. "Professional accountants who specialize in senior finances. You would not have to worry about paying bills or making financial decisions." The idea of strangers controlling my money, of having to ask permission for every purchase, filled me with dread. I had managed my own finances for 50 years, paid off my mortgage early, built a modest but sufficient retirement fund. Now they wanted to portray me as incompetent and irresponsible. Jake's emotional manipulation became more aggressive. "Do you know how hard it is for Sarah and me to worry about you constantly?" he demanded. "We lose sleep wondering if you are okay out here. We cannot enjoy our own lives because we are always afraid something terrible is going to happen." "I never asked you to worry," I protested. "I've been taking care of myself just fine." "That is exactly the problem," Jake shot back. "You do not even recognize that you need help. That is a classic sign of cognitive decline." Sarah nodded sagely as if she had medical expertise instead of a real estate license. "Denial is very common in early-stage dementia. The patient often believes they are functioning normally when family members can clearly see deterioration." They were trapping me in a logical bind. Any protest I made about my mental capacity would be dismissed as evidence of my mental incapacity. Any mistake or confusion would be magnified into proof that I needed supervision. Any assertion of independence would be labeled as dangerous stubbornness. The time pressure intensified. Sarah kept glancing at her watch and mentioning deadlines for paperwork, waiting lists at facilities, market conditions that might change. "We really need to finalize these arrangements today," she insisted. "Delayed decisions often lead to missed opportunities." Jake brought up practical concerns about the approaching winter. What if the power goes out during an ice storm? What if the heating system breaks down and you cannot get repair service quickly? What if you slip on ice walking to your mailbox? Every scenario they painted was designed to make me feel vulnerable and afraid. They were systematically dismantling my confidence in my ability to live independently, replacing it with anxiety and self-doubt. But something in their urgency, their refusal to slow down and discuss alternatives, their insistence on immediate signatures triggered my suspicions. If this was really about my safety and well-being, why could we not take time to explore options? Why did everything have to happen right now today without consulting anyone else? I want to talk to someone at the bank about the financial implications, I said suddenly. Before I sign anything, I want professional advice about property transfers and estate planning. The effect was immediate and telling. Both Jake and Sarah became visibly uncomfortable. They exchanged worried glances and began offering reasons why a bank consultation was unnecessary. "We have already researched all the financial aspects," Sarah said quickly. "Real estate transfers are routine, and I handle them professionally all the time." "Bank managers do not really understand estate planning," Jake added. "You would be better off talking to a lawyer, and we could arrange that later after you are settled." But their resistance only confirmed my growing suspicion that something was seriously wrong with their entire proposal. If everything was legitimate and in my best interest, why would they object to professional review? "I'm going to call Tom Wilson at First National tomorrow morning," I announced. "If this is all as straightforward as you say, he can explain the financial details and put my mind at ease." That night I lay awake staring at the ceiling of the bedroom where I had slept for 25 years, processing everything that had happened and trying to understand how my relationship with Jake had deteriorated so completely. The son who used to help me build this house was now trying to take it away from me. I got up at 5:30 before dawn and made the first of several important phone calls. Tom Wilson had been the manager at First National Bank for 15 years, and we had developed a friendship based on mutual respect and shared interests in local history. When I called his direct line, he answered immediately. "Tom, this is Nelson Bradley. I need to meet with you this morning about some property and financial issues. My son and his wife are pressuring me to sign some papers, and I want to make sure I understand what I would be agreeing to." Tom's voice was immediately concerned. "Of course, Nelson. What kind of papers are they asking you to sign?" "Property transfer documents, power of attorney forms, that sort of thing. They say it is for my own protection, but something does not feel right about the whole situation." There was a pause before Tom spoke again, and his tone was more serious. "Nelson, I have to tell you something. Your son called here last week asking about your accounts, wanting to know about adding his name as a co-owner or getting power of attorney access. I told him that any changes would require your presence and explicit consent." The revelation hit me like a cold shock. Jake had been planning this ambush for at least a week, researching how to gain access to my financial accounts before ever approaching me about assisted living. What exactly did he want to know? Account balances, automatic payments, whether you had any loans or liens against your property. He said he was concerned about your ability to manage your finances independently. I explained that without your written authorization, I could not discuss your private financial information with him. So Jake had already attempted an end run around me, trying to get information that would help him build his case for taking control. The fact that he had failed to get bank cooperation explained why he and Sarah were now pushing so hard for immediate signatures on legal documents. "Tom, can you meet with all three of us this morning? I want Jake and Sarah to hear directly from you about the status of my accounts and property ownership. I think there are some misconceptions that need to be cleared up." "Absolutely. How about 10 o'clock in my office? And Nelson, I would recommend bringing any documents they want you to sign. I can review them and explain exactly what you would be agreeing to." I spent the next 2 hours reviewing my own financial records, property deeds, insurance policies, and legal documents. Everything was in perfect order. My checking account showed regular deposits from my pension and Social Security, reasonable withdrawals for living expenses, and a healthy balance that proved I was managing my finances responsibly. The property deed was clear and unambiguous. I was the sole owner of the house and land with no co-signers, no liens, no encumbrances that would complicate ownership. The mortgage had been paid off 6 years ago, and I had the satisfaction documents to prove it. My insurance policies were current, my property taxes were paid automatically from my checking account, and my utilities were managed through budget billing plans that spread costs evenly throughout the year. There was absolutely no evidence of financial mismanagement or inability to handle my affairs independently. When Jake called at 8:30, presumably to confirm our bank meeting, I was ready for him. "I spoke with Tom Wilson this morning," I said without preamble. "He told me about your call last week asking for information about my accounts." Jake was silent for several seconds. "Dad, I was just trying to get a complete picture of your financial situation so we could make the best decisions." Without talking to me first. Without my knowledge or consent, that sounds more like investigation than consultation. We wanted to have all the facts before presenting options to you. Sarah thought it would be more efficient to research everything in advance. Sarah thought, I repeated. This was Sarah's idea. Another pause. We discussed it together. We are both concerned about your situation. We will discuss all our concerns at the bank this morning. 10 o'clock sharp, Tom Wilson's office. Bring the papers you want me to sign and we will get professional review of exactly what they mean. Dad, I do not think that is necessary. We can handle this privately within the family. Nothing about this feels private or family-oriented to me, Jake. If you want my signature on anything, we do it transparently with professional guidance. 10 o'clock. The tone of authority in my voice seemed to surprise him. Perhaps he had expected me to remain confused and passive, easy to manipulate into compliance. But 25 years of running my own contracting business had taught me how to recognize when someone was trying to take advantage of me. Walking into First National Bank that morning felt like entering a courtroom where I would either vindicate myself or face humiliation. Jake and Sarah arrived exactly at 10, both dressed in their best professional attire, carrying briefcases and folders like they were lawyers preparing for trial. Tom Wilson greeted me warmly in the lobby, his handshake firm and his smile genuine. His acknowledgement of Jake and Sarah was polite, but noticeably cooler, and I could see them registering the difference in reception. Tom's office was spacious and comfortable, with large windows overlooking Main Street and family photos on his desk that reminded me of simpler times when family loyalty was taken for granted rather than questioned. We sat around his conference table, and Tom opened by asking exactly what kind of assistance I was seeking. Sarah immediately took charge of the presentation, her real estate training evident in her organized approach and professional demeanor. She spread the property transfer documents across the table and began explaining why these arrangements would be beneficial for everyone involved. Mr. Wilson, we are concerned about Mr. Bradley's ability to maintain his property and manage his financial affairs independently. These documents would allow his son to provide assistance and oversight while ensuring that Mr. Bradley receives appropriate care. Tom examined the papers carefully, his expression growing more serious as he read through the legal language. These are not assistance or oversight documents, he said finally. These are complete ownership transfers. Mr. Bradley would be signing over all rights to his property with no guarantee of retention or recovery. Jake shifted uncomfortably in his chair. That is just a formality to simplify management issues. Obviously, Dad would still have full use of his property. Actually, Tom replied, according to these documents, he would not. Once this transfer is complete, Mr. Bradley would have no legal claim to the property. The new owner could sell it, mortgage it, or dispose of it in any way they chose without consulting the original owner. Sarah tried to regain control of the conversation. These are standard estate planning documents. Many families use similar arrangements to avoid probate complications and ensure smooth property transitions. Tom looked directly at me. Mr. Bradley, is estate planning your primary concern here? Are you looking to transfer property ownership as part of end-of-life planning? Absolutely not, I said firmly. I want to retain full ownership and control of my property. I'm not planning to transfer anything to anyone. Tom turned to his computer and pulled up my account records. Let me review Mr. Bradley's current financial status so we can all understand the actual situation. What appeared on his screen was a clear picture of financial responsibility and stability. Regular deposits, reasonable withdrawals, automatic payments for all major expenses, and account balances that showed careful money management over many years. Mr. Bradley maintains excellent financial health, Tom announced. His accounts are well managed, his automatic payments ensure that bills are paid on time, and his spending patterns show careful budgeting and responsible decision-making. The color drained from Jake's face as Tom continued his review. There have been several inquiries about Mr. Bradley's accounts over the past few weeks. Someone has been asking detailed questions about balances, payment schedules, and account access procedures. Sarah tried to minimize the significance. We were just gathering information to better understand the overall financial picture. Without Mr. Bradley's knowledge or consent, Tom pointed out, and some of the questions involved ways to gain access to accounts without the account holder's direct authorization. I felt vindicated but also deeply hurt. My own son had been investigating ways to circumvent my control over my own money, treating me like an adversary rather than his father. Tom pulled out a property database on his computer. Let me also clarify the ownership status of Mr. Bradley's real estate. The screen showed clear, unambiguous records. Bradley is the sole owner of his property with no liens, no co-owners, and no encumbrances. The property is worth approximately $420,000 in today's market. Jake's jaw tightened. We understand the current value. We are thinking about Dad's long-term financial security. His long-term security is excellent, Tom responded. Owning valuable real estate free and clear is one of the best financial positions a retiree can have. I would strongly advise against transferring ownership unless there are compelling legal or medical reasons. Sarah made one last attempt to salvage their position. What about the challenges of property maintenance and management as Mr. Bradley ages? Tom smiled slightly. Mr. Bradley has been managing his property successfully for 25 years. His financial records show regular payments to contractors for maintenance, scheduled property improvements, and responsible budgeting for upkeep. There is no evidence of any management problems. The silence in the room was deafening. Every argument Jake and Sarah had made was systematically dismantled by objective financial evidence and professional assessment. I was not incompetent, confused, or financially irresponsible. I was exactly what I had always been, a careful, independent homeowner managing his affairs successfully. Jake finally spoke, but his voice carried anger rather than acceptance. This is ridiculous. We are trying to help, and you are making us look like criminals. I'm not making you look like anything, I replied quietly. Your actions speak for themselves. The immediate aftermath of our bank meeting was silence. Jake and Sarah left without another word, their confident demeanor completely shattered by the professional reality check they had received. I sat in Tom's office for a few more minutes, processing the magnitude of what had just happened. Nelson, Tom said gently, I've seen this situation before. Adult children who become impatient about inheritance, who convince themselves they are acting in their parents' best interest when they are really acting in their own financial interest. It is more common than you might think. The validation meant everything to me. This was not just my paranoid imagination or stubborn resistance to help. This was a recognizable pattern of financial elder abuse that banking professionals were trained to identify and prevent. Over the following days and weeks, I waited for Jake to call with an apology or explanation, but my phone remained silent. Word of what happened spread through our small community, partly because Tom had to file a report about the attempted financial manipulation, and partly because I decided to be open about what I had experienced. The response from neighbors and friends was overwhelming support. Ms. Patterson stopped by with a casserole and stayed for 3 hours, sharing stories about her own struggles with her adult daughter's attempts to control her finances. The Henderson family invited me for dinner and offered to help with any property maintenance I might need. Most surprising was the number of other older residents who approached me to share similar experiences. There was an entire network of seniors who had faced pressure from adult children to give up their independence, transfer their assets, or accept living arrangements they did not want. I started volunteering at the senior center, helping other elderly residents understand their financial rights and legal options when facing family pressure. Tom Wilson began referring people to me who needed support navigating similar situations with their adult children. The work gave me purpose and helped me process my own sense of loss. Losing Jake's respect and affection was painful, but I found meaning in helping others maintain their dignity and independence. I discovered strengths and capabilities that I had not known I possessed. My house became more important to me than ever, not just as shelter, but as a symbol of self-determination and hard-earned security. Every morning when I walked through rooms I had built with my own hands, I felt grateful for the courage to stand up for myself when it mattered most. Winter came and went without major problems. I hired local teenagers to help with snow shoveling and gutter cleaning, supporting young people in my community while maintaining my property efficiently. The systems I had put in place over 25 years of homeownership continued to work exactly as designed. Spring brought new projects and renewed energy. I planted a larger garden than usual, installed new lighting in my workshop, and began planning renovations that would make the house even more comfortable for aging in place. These were not the actions of someone incapable of managing his own affairs. Jake's absence became less painful, as I accepted that our relationship had probably been changing for years without my recognizing it. Perhaps his marriage to Sarah had highlighted differences in values that had always existed. Perhaps my own independence had become inconvenient for their plans and expectations. The hardest lesson was understanding that love does not always mean agreement, and family loyalty cannot be based on surrendering personal autonomy. Real caring involves respecting someone's right to make their own decisions, even when you disagree with those decisions. I learned to find peace in knowing that I had acted with integrity throughout the entire ordeal. I had not been stubborn or unreasonable. I had been protective of rights and assets that I had every legal and moral authority to protect. The wisdom that emerged from this experience was profound and life-changing. I understood that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is refusing to let them take advantage of you. Enabling manipulation or control, even from family members, ultimately serves no one's best interests. Today, I wake up each morning in the house I built surrounded by evidence of a life well lived and decisions well made. I have neighbors who care about me by choice rather than obligation, friends who respect my independence rather than seeking to undermine it, and activities that give my life meaning and purpose. The question I want to leave you with is this. Have you ever had to choose between keeping peace in your family and protecting your own rights and dignity? When someone you love tries to convince you that giving up your independence is for your own good, how do you tell the difference between genuine care and self-serving manipulation? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, because these are challenges that many of us face as we navigate family relationships and aging. If this story resonated with you or helped you think about your own situation differently, please hit that like button and share it with anyone who might benefit from hearing it. Subscribe for more real stories about life's complicated moments and the wisdom we can gain from them. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that standing up for yourself is not selfish. It is necessary. Sometimes the people who claim to love us most need to learn that love requires respect, not control.